Thank you guys for attending today's session, Trends in Enterprise Mobility. My name is Maurice White. I am the Director of Enterprise Mobility for Seneca Global. We are an IT solutions and services firm that specializes in working and partnering with mid-market organizations through the development, management, and even the support of world-class IT solutions. Our unique smart sourcing model allows for us to custom fit, if you will, a set of resources that allows for the successful delivery of your IT solution. So please make sure to stop by our booth. We can talk a little bit more about how Seneca Global can partner with your organizations to help you guys out. In addition to stopping by to talk to us about that, make sure you stop by and talk about enterprise mobility, and we will talk about what that all means today. A little bit about myself. I have been in IT for approximately 15 years. I have a very, very strong software development background. It ranges everything from mainframe through .NET, through mobile operating systems such as iPhone, Android, iOS, even Windows Mobile back in the day, not Windows Phone, Windows Mobile. So I have a very diverse set of skills with respect to software development. Most recently, I worked for BlackBerry. And I've actually worked with them inside of their enterprise mobility practice. I've had the privilege of working with some of the largest organizations on the planet, all around enterprise mobility. I've sat around the round table with them and helped them work through their enterprise mobility issues and concerns. And it is from that perspective that I'm going to be talking about trends in enterprise mobility today. So, without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Here is our agenda. First thing I'm going to do is talk to you guys about bringing your own device, BYOD. We're going to talk about doing that. We're going to go a little bit over the history of BYOD. Where did it come from? We're also going to talk about some of the challenges that organizations who are considering BYOD strategies, some of the things that they're facing. We're going to talk about mobile device management. Because of BYOD, organizations have diverse device ecosystems, everything from laptops to tablets, to mobile devices of varying operating systems. Even those operating systems are running on different versions. So what are organizations doing to manage this diverse device ecosystem? We're also going to talk about cloud in the enterprise, right? Everyone's been talking about cloud. There was this whole campaign by Microsoft not too long ago, that whole To the Cloud campaign. So we're going to go to the cloud from the perspective of our, from the enterprise trend perspective. We're going to talk about what are some of the things or traits of the cloud that are drawing organizations to consider it as part of their mobile strategy, and what are the things that are still keeping people away, still keeping organizations away. Then we will wrap it up talking about enterprise application development. And I know that you guys will want me to continue on beyond this topic, but I only have 30 minutes, so I'll definitely have to wrap it up at this topic. See, I feel like we're going to create a bond, and you guys are not going to want to leave my side, because I don't want to leave your side already. I feel something special here. So, enterprise application development, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what that is. There are a lot of organizations that have been considering mobilizing existing applications that currently reside inside of their firewall, and they're going to be looking for ways to mobilize these applications. That's enterprise application development. We're going to talk about some of the constraints and considerations around that as well. If you have questions, I asked if you could defer those to the end of the session. I have a decent amount of content here, and I usually go through this in about an hour. But because we're going to be only spending 30 minutes together today, I want to make sure that I have enough time to go through all the content. And at the end, I'll have an opportunity for you guys to ask questions, throw eggs, tomatoes, whatever you want to do at that point. But if we can defer that to the end, I would definitely appreciate it. Thank you for laughing, sir. I appreciate it. If you get one, you got one. That's good. Okay, so let's level set. Let's start off by talking about what enterprise mobility is. There are a lot of different thoughts about what it is, but this is one of the best definitions that I've seen. It refers to the shift in business practices where more employees work outside of the office and must access secure corporate data to conduct daily tasks. I specifically highlighted must access secure corporate data for a reason. This means that this is more than email. Back in the day, enterprise mobility represented me successfully getting your device to receive and send email. This is more than that. This is, you are a manufacturing organization, and organizations and your employees are looking to access schematics, right? That's something that they might not necessarily do in email. You might have a whole system for managing schematics of things that you're building. If you're in the healthcare industry, accessing patient information. You're not going to say, hey, email me so-and-so's prescription information. You might have a system that manages that. So actually mobilizing workforces to be able to access data that's beyond email, securely access it. That's the thing when it comes to enterprise mobility. That's the thing that if you're considering a mobile strategy that includes some of what we're going to be talking about today, make sure that security is paramount. Like I said, I worked for BlackBerry. BlackBerry has been an organization that has been very strong in spite of all the black eyes it's taken in some of the other parts of the arena, but with respect to enterprise, they've always been considered a gold standard of security. So a lot of that is now part of my DNA now. That's very important. So make sure that you are considering security as you are moving forward with some of your enterprise mobility strategies. So let's go into BYOD. Once upon a time, way back in 2007, a device was released into the marketplace that changed the landscape of mobile. We know what that device was. It was the iPhone. Not only did it usher in an entire new thought process, especially as it came to apps and app stores, and I have too many apps, I have too few apps, I'm an app developer, I'm an app tester. It created a whole new paradigm around apps. It also was one of the early catalysts for BYOD. I had the privilege of seeing this myself. I worked as a senior software developer at a trading company in downtown Chicago, and the co-founder of the organization actually got an iPhone for Christmas. So he brought that iPhone in after Christmas break, handed it over to his IT guy, our IT guy, and said, get me email on this. Our IT guy is very sharp, very bright guy, but was bewildered. Took him a couple of weeks to figure this out. He was on the phone with Microsoft, talking to them about their exchange. He was on the phone with Apple and trying to work through all the different nuances of getting this to work. So this actually took a few weeks before it happened. Then, after a few weeks of him holding the boss's iPhone, and that's not a scenario you want to be in if you're an IT guy, but after a few weeks of holding it and working through it, he was able to successfully get this done. That was considered a success. So that was considered management. He officially was able to manage his iPhone because he was able to successfully get email delivered to it. That was it. In the early days of BYOD and mobility, as long as I was able to get you email on your device, I won. In fact, I get to put that on my review when it's raise time and say, hey, I got email to one iPhone, so that should be at least worth 1%, right? But as the iPhone became more pervasive in the market, then Android followed. This trend continued to grow. More and more people began to bring their own devices into work. More and more IT administrators were faced with unique sets of challenges. There's nuances involved with all these different operating systems. And in fact, when they first came out, they weren't designed necessarily with connecting into enterprise infrastructures. They weren't designed that way. They've actually been doing all kinds of things now. iOS 6, for instance, Android Enterprise. These are all the things that are happening now. This is 7 years later. But during that period of time, it was a challenge to get this done. So IT departments were faced with learning things about operating systems. They knew their corporate infrastructures very well. They can tell you everything about the servers, and in fact, back then, BlackBerry Enterprise Server was still very prominent. They could tell you everything about how to manage BlackBerries. But when it came into iPhones and Androids, that was where it became a big challenge. So it created a whole unique setup for the IT departments. Now, from the perspective of the executives, once they were able to get email in their hand on devices other than BlackBerries, it started to get wheels turning. So then it created a need for mobile-oriented enterprise applications. So executives are walking around just sending and getting emails. Then they'd think, hey, there's a sales reporting system back at the office. It would be really cool if I can get my hands on that application and have that installed on this device. And that began to usher in this whole enterprise application development paradigm that's happening, or trend that's occurring right now. So what are some of the challenges of BYOD? If you're considering implementing a BYOD, or if you already have one in place, here are some of the things that are challenges of that approach. Sensitive files and data are exposed to theft, loss, or corruption. Again, BYOD stands for bring your own device. So if I'm a company and I hire you, you are bringing your device in. That means you're administering your device. So I don't know if you have a password on it. You might not. You might be someone who's like, I don't like passwords, or your password could be 1234. And then you get off of the plane, you get off of the train, you get, I might as well say automobile, planes, trains, and automobiles. But you walk away from your phone accidentally, you leave it there, someone picks it up, accesses your device, they now have access to sensitive files and sensitive data. As a company, I'm frightened, because there's all kinds of things that could actually happen as a direct result of that. So that's one of the challenges from the BYOD perspective. If you have employees bringing in their own devices, they have access to do this. And it could be by chance. It could be theft of hardware or even software theft. And what I mean by that is accidentally installing or downloading a malicious application. And this application steals data from your device. The data that's being stolen, customer information, schematics, right? For hardware that you don't plan on releasing for a year and a half. That's something that you don't want to happen, right? Compliance and governance. That especially applies if you're in regulated industries, banking, healthcare, HIPAA, PCI, right? If you are in a scenario where you are in the healthcare industry and you actually have patient-type information on your device and it gets lost or stolen, and now that data is leaked, you could have fines levied against your organization. You could lose business. It could be a lot of bad PR around that. There's quite a lot of risk around that approach from that perspective. And then, as I kind of mentioned on the last slide, IT preparedness for managing mobile devices and operating systems under the umbrella of compliance and governance, though. Not only are they now concerned with just keeping up with all the different things that are happening in the mobile operating system space, but they now have to start thinking about things like HIPAA, PCI, and other regulations, other governance and compliance concerns. So that actually is a challenge that puts a lot of pressure on your IT department. But nonetheless, these are challenges that are underway, and many of them are overcomeable, if you will. I don't even know if that is a word, but I had no coffee today, so I'm kind of in the word creation phase of my day. Now the next item, mobile device management, the cost of it. One of the things that BYOD was supposed to do was to save the cost of hardware. So if I hire 100 people, I don't have to buy and give out 100 devices. That saves me a decent amount of money. But however, these 100 people have iPads, iPhones, Galaxy Tabs, Windows Phone, BlackBerry. They have all different variations of Android, and I now have to figure out a way to manage all that. So then the cost of me that I'm giving up from the hardware perspective now comes back because I have to learn a way to manage all this in a safe, secure way that keeps me compliant and in governance with the industry that I'm in. That's, again, if you're in a regulated industry. But even if you're not, who wants their intellectual property walking out the door when someone decides to quit? So these are some of the things you need to be considering. That's it from the BYOD perspective. Mobile device management. Let's talk a little bit more about what that means. MDM deals with deploying, securing, and of course I highlighted that on purpose, monitoring, integrating, and managing mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, and laptops. That's essentially what mobile device management is. It's kind of what the title implies, managing mobile devices, right? But the thing is, a solid mobile device management strategy includes the securing of these devices as well, the securing more specifically of the data. Because again, this is your own personal device. As a company, I don't want to secure your Facebook friends list. That's of little value, in fact, no value to me, right? However, protecting the corporate network, that is what I'm concerned about. The data that's inside of my house, inside of our organization, that patient data, that PCI data, all the specific data, that secure, sensitive data, that's the information that I am concerned about protecting. So what that introduces is what's called dual persona. And it's essentially, I was going to make a joke, but I've decided to not make that joke because it was bad now that I've thought about it. But what it did is it actually brought in this new trend called dual persona. Dual persona, essentially what that is the ability to create an enterprise-oriented virtual space on your device. So this, again, this is your device. So you administer your device, you update the operating system when you want to, you install Facebook, you unfriend your ex-boyfriend, whatever you want to do, that's all up to you. However, on the dual persona, this specific virtual, enterprise-oriented virtual space, if you will, is administered by the company. So therefore, that's where I can hold the sensitive data. That's where I can enforce password policies and say, you have to input a password after 5 minutes of inactivity. It has to be a complex password too, so it has to include special characters, capitals, etc. Dual persona is actually starting to show up more with a lot of mobile device management software providers. We'll talk a little bit about more of who they are. But that's, again, one of the ways that enterprises are looking to kind of solve some of the challenges that we've talked about, because these are large concerns. The government does not want to hear that you couldn't think of a way to secure the data. They don't want excuses. They will give you a fine, and that will be the end of the discussion. Now, MDM software secures, monitors, manages, and supports mobile devices deployed across enterprises. Again, it's restating what the definition is. But this actually applies to everything. Good mobile device management software also, I wouldn't say good, I'll just say some of them also allow you to manage laptops as well, in addition to just mobile devices such as tablets and phones, laptops as well. That level of management depends on the features exposed by the mobile device operating system provider. What I mean by that is this. Again, I'll use manufacturing, working on a military contract. I've worked with organizations that are doing that kind of stuff. And what they wanted to do, and what many of them do still actually do, if you will, is disable the camera once someone walks into the plant where they're building all this top secret stuff. That makes sense, because you don't want to give someone the temptation. I gave it my 2 weeks a week or so ago, and I still have access to this plant. Let me snap a photo and put it on Instagram, right? These are things that they want to prevent. So if one operating system provider allows you to disable the camera as a mobile device management software vendor, then that doesn't mean that the other one would allow you to do so. So if Android allows you to disable the camera, there's no guarantee that iOS is going to allow you to do it. It's really up to Apple. It's up to Google. Whatever they expose to these software providers is what you are able to manage. So that's something that you're going to keep in mind if you are considering leveraging some of these mobile device management software vendors. Mobile application management, that ties into dual persona. It's becoming more important. They are now realizing, enterprises are realizing more and more that it's not about just managing hardware, it's also about managing software. More specifically, corporate data. That's all they care about. That's all they should care about. I don't want them caring about all the other different things that I'm doing on my phone, especially after I had too much to drink. That is the last thing I want to happen. So mobile application management is becoming more important, more prevalent. It's something that's very serious in the mobile device management strategy discussions. So here are some of the MDM solutions providers. You might have heard of some of them, all of them. You might have heard of none of them. AirWatch, good technology. BlackBerry, SAP. Citrix has a solution as well as Mobile Iron. You might have heard a little bit about Mobile Iron in the news. I think it was an insurance company and overseas was able to hack into Mobile Iron. So I'm making no recommendations about any of these providers. I'm just letting you know that who some of the leaders are, who are the ones that are the most prominent. And of course, Mass 360. Now let's talk about cloud in the enterprise. So what is the cloud, right? Essentially, from the perspective of an enterprise, it's storage and access of data and software that reside remotely. That's all it is. Storing data remotely and accessing data remotely. Software that exists remotely and administered remotely. That's essentially what cloud means to the enterprise. It's configurable, so you can build a custom environment. It's scalable. So from the configurable perspective, you can actually create an account, if you will, with one of these cloud service providers. Go into this account and tell them I'd like a Windows Server 2012 operating system version 3. I need a 500 gigabyte hard drive. I need an 8-core processor because I'm going to be doing some pretty intense calculations, etc. You have the ability, almost like a checklist, to go through and pick all the things that you need. So it's very configurable. I've actually had the privilege of doing that myself for a solution that I was working on some time back, and I can see the value in it because now, if you're a smaller organization, you don't have to have a data center. You don't have to have 50 servers over there with a guy who's responsible for managing those servers, and then a backup plan in case that data center burns down. You don't have to worry about all of that. You don't have to worry about redundancy. These are things that you get to take off of your to-do list with respect to things that you should be considering. So there's benefit from the perspective of enterprise from that area. They like the fact that they don't have to worry about the hardware. They can just worry about the thing they do best, and that is their business. That is their sweet spot. Let me outsource that component. Let someone else manage that. It's scalable. It's elastic, right? So if I'm in a scenario where I need a certain amount of bandwidth one month and a larger amount the next month, the cloud can handle that. So for instance, if you're a mobile app developer, in this scenario, I'll say consumer facing, and you have a server component, right? And this mobile app needs to talk to this thing, and then next thing you know, your mobile app's on the news. Everybody's downloading this application, and now everyone's using it. Now it gets to hit this server. The cloud can adjust to that. The cloud can adjust almost instantly from 10 users using your app to 100,000 users using your application. So it's scalable from that perspective. Very good benefit of it. Software as a service, that's cloud-based. SaaS, all these acronyms. I'm sorry about giving you all these acronyms. I didn't create them. I just know what they mean. But software as a service, that's also cloud-based. Salesforce.com. It also gives you the benefit of not having to manage that software. I don't have to manage the software, its releases, updates to it. I can also access it from anywhere. That's why people also like software as a service. As long as I have a browser, I can access that software and do what I need to do. It's also good for collaboration. If my colleague's in Texas and I'm in California, then we can actually work together on something. If my colleague's in Miami or I'm in Chicago, we could actually work together on something. It increases collaboration. However, some companies are untrusting of the cloud, and it makes sense as to why. Highly sensitive data, typically stored on-prem or on-site, on-premise. These are the things that they are concerned about shipping off to the cloud. That makes sense, right? Because when I actually signed up for the specific cloud service provider that I connected with, I talked to no one over the phone. I did everything online. Then I got an email with access to a virtual environment, and then I set that up. But I don't know who has access to that data. I don't know who, it could be the next NSA leaker as far as I'm concerned, right? Or at least as far as some of the regulated industries are concerned. So many of them are still untrusting of the cloud because of the fact that they don't know who has access to it. They like to be the gatekeepers for that data. That makes perfect sense. I want companies like that holding my data. So that's definitely one of the things that are still keeping some enterprises away. Economic model is too costly for some enterprises. As I mentioned, it's scalable, it's elastic, that's cool, but it's also costly. You pay for data as if you were roaming in another country, and you get on the internet and you get a large bill later. It's like that. You pay for bytes and bits when it comes to cloud service providers. That's how they make their money. So if you are that app developer, you're happy that you got all these downloads until you get the bill from your cloud service provider. Now, and that's one of the things from the some enterprises, they need to plan out their year. They need a fixed cost as to what it is going to cost to run my entire IT department. I can't say it's going to be somewhere between 5,000 and 5 million, depending on how many people are going to be downloading or tying into the cloud. And so for that reason, some enterprises are still shying away from it. There are cloud service providers that are working with them a little bit more intimately to try to stabilize some of their cost expectations. However, that is still kind of early in the process. So some enterprises are still shying away from it from this point. Some are using it, some are going towards it, some are still staying back. Here are some of the cloud service providers: Amazon Web Services, Windows Azure, Rackspace Hosting. I actually met one of the owners of Rackspace. He's a very nice guy. Salesforce.com, that's software as a service. So is Oracle. They have a CRM as well. That is another cloud-based software as a service. Enterprise application development. So as I mentioned, the more that enterprises decide to mobilize their workforces, that drives a need for enterprise application development. So existing processes, business processes, and applications that currently exist inside of your organization, people are looking to mobilize these very same apps, these very same processes. However, many of them were built for desktop. They were built for desktop. So when that happens, if someone is building an application that they know is going to run on a laptop or a 20-inch monitor or a 22-inch monitor, then they actually get to design the GUI differently, right? They know they have tons of screen real estate they can work with. So I can put buttons all over it. I can put fields all over it. I know you have 101 keys on your keyboard, so I know that you can press the tab button to jump from field to field. Plus, it has unlimited power. It's plugged into the wall, right? It's not a battery sticking inside of it. Even laptops, if you're sitting in one spot for more than 30 minutes, you likely plug it up. So in that case as well, unlimited power. So that means when people are building desktop applications, they might not be as focused on how much of the processor I'm using when it runs a long-running operation. They might not be as concerned about that. Also, extensive and reliable network, whether that's Ethernet cable plugged into the side of your computer or over Wi-Fi. It's reliable. So if I'm building an application that resides on the desktop, I don't have to build logic into the application that checks to see if I have network connectivity before going into a remote resource. All it'll do is just come back with some kind of error message and say, hey, server's down, and then you don't look at the app as the problem, you go and talk to your IT guy. So that's how generally applications are developed for desktop. Smartphone is the exact opposite. These are the things that you need to consider if you're going to go from desktop to mobile. Small screens, obviously, a lot smaller than 20 inches. Who wants to carry a 20-inch phone around? Limited keyboards. You ever seen a tab button on a keyboard? So that means if you can't have 20 fields all over the place and expect your user to be able to jump from them as easily. The user interaction model is different. It's the finger. It's not a mouse, and I mean like the good finger, not the bad finger, right? It's not the mouse with the pointer. It's your finger. That's how you interact with the device. So you need to design your user interfaces with that in mind. It's going to be a finger that's going there. Also battery life. You have to be considerate of that now, because those desktop applications, they are not concerned about it. So you can't simply take that app and throw it on your device because it might be something that has long-running processes, and you don't want to be the developer or be behind or even on the project team of an app that's responsible for draining the battery of your mobilized workforces. You don't want to be that person. Unreliable network. We know that. You could just walk through downtown Chicago and lose your signal. But if someone is using their application, should that stop them from using your app? Should all of a sudden you get a message that says, sorry, network's down? Or if your app, knowing that that's likely a possibility, have logic in there that says, okay, the network is down right now, but I'm just going to save this till later, and then when I detect that the network is back, then I'll go ahead and send it to that server on the back end. Right? These are some of the things that you need to be considering when you're going from desktop to mobile. So how about Rock'em Sock'em? Enterprise development versus consumer application development. I've actually worked in both. I know I'm speaking a lot from the enterprise perspective, but I've done consumer as well. There are some overlap, but there are many differences. So if you have some experience with consumer, that's great. Some of that is going to roll over, but some new unique challenges that enterprises face are they have a unique set of needs. So applications need secure access to behind the firewall resources. Also, access to legacy systems. SOAP, for instance. That's a protocol for communicating remotely that came out around the late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of big organizations still have SOAP protocol as far as connecting to their servers. So that means you have to use a newer technology called REST in order to tie into it. Mobile applications, especially some that are built in some of these web technologies like HTML5 and all that, they communicate remotely via REST. To talk to an old SOAP component, there's all kinds of hoops you have to jump through. So that's a unique challenge. Also, proactive applications. Executives are looking to do things such as executive dashboards, et cetera. So if you don't want someone to have to open your app and hit refresh, is there a new update? Refresh, is there a new update? Refresh, is there a new update? You want them to be proactive. If something happens that your executive leadership at your organization needs to respond to, your app should get that information to them immediately so they can do what they have to do and go on about their day. And of course, cross-platform. That's not unique to enterprise, because consumer obviously wants to go cross-platform as well. But that's definitely something that consumer is thinking about now because of BYOD, because of the fact that they know that they have all kinds of different devices coming into their ecosystem. They now need to build applications that can span multiple device operating systems. And this is our last slide. What are some of the apps that I have been seeing out there in the enterprise space? Executive dashboards, approvals, apps that tie into business intelligence, Oracle, SAP. Oh, as I mentioned, workforce approvals, expenses, travel, et cetera. Employee directory lookup. I was working with one of the largest organizations that we all know of, and they make soap and household goods and things. And you can Google that, and I'm sure you'd figure it out. But they wanted an employee directory lookup because they have 20,000 employees. So that makes sense. Emergency contact list. Who do I call if my boss is not around? Disaster recovery applications. I do manage a data center. What happens if it burns down? Who do I call? Obviously, I call 911, but then after that, who else do I call, right? So these are also some of the applications that are happening now. And that is all I have for you today. Any questions? That is great. That means I have done such a good job that I have pre-answered the questions. I also know that this might have been new to quite a few of you or not, and I mean that in no disrespectful way. But if you'd like to talk more about this, please visit the Seneca Global booth. We can talk about how our organization can help you through your enterprise mobility concerns and anything tech. I love talking this stuff. Other than that, thank you guys. Go USA.